morning, aspirant. Once again, I'm back. Today is Monday, new week, new energy with new ambition and new subject. So today's our topics is IR. As earlier I told you, daily what we are going to do. Daily we are doing one subject. Daily one subject along with whatever the topics in current. That means this will be easy for you also to understand the topic concept and get the concurrent idea instead of the running behind the 3 4 subjects and taking prelims you will take. And as recommended by the my seniors, I will provide you the PDF of all these topics, and tomorrow onwards I am going to provide you the PPT of all these topics what I am going daily taking the current affair. Okay, so let's start. We are going to start IR. As you know, it is a part of GS2. IR 50 marks in mains, 50 marks in mains, that to question number 9, 10, 19, 20. So why we want to study IR? Because of this 50 marks. But in prelims, recent years, if you see the questions in 2025 prelims, BRICS, then BIMSTEC, then NATO, and other geographical locations and everything. So my point is this: for prelims, this topic is very important. The thing is this: around 8 to 9 questions they are revolving around this IR portion. Okay, particularly the organizations, what are the organizations, then the members of organization, and in those organizations where India is too much engaged, they are going too much deeper. In 2025 they ask question on BRICS, that to a BRICS charter, how the BRICS BIMSTEC chart and the BRICS declaration. So we have to study IR, that to comprehensive manner. Our today's topics are Singapore. Last week, Singapore Prime Minister visited India, and on that basis, Singapore is a country. But if you see this UPSC syllabus, then you will get to know that Singapore as such is not mentioned, but there is one India's engagement with the regional and global organizations. So ASEAN, broader picture is ASEAN, and in this Singapore is one country. Okay, so what we are going to do, we are going to study ASEAN India relationship. This is the first topic. The second topic is India EU relationship. Why? Because if you see the today's first page of the Indian Express, they have mentioned that there are two trade commissioners of EU. They are coming to finalize the BTA. And now we can say the kind of the free trade agreement. And the third one, if time permit, India China. Okay, but I will cover these three topics with thoroughly, comprehensively, evaluation, dimension, and everything. You will no need to go for the read specifically for the prelims and specifically for the mains. Okay, this is a one study approach I am going to follow. So let's start with ASEAN. ASEAN is a grouping which formed in 1967, but our engagement, this is a 10 member grouping, 1967, ASEAN base. And if you see the logo of ASEAN is particularly the grains, the bowl or something is there, but the logo UPSC has in CDS, UPSC has what is the motto of ASEAN, the logo of ASEAN. Okay, so 10 members, but 11th member is on the way. The December, I think October meeting of ASEAN countries annual summit will add Timur Leste as a its 11th. It's already approved in 2000 in principle approval given in the 2022, and in 2025 Timur Leste will be the 11th member of ASEAN. So kindly remember this. Now the membership of ASEAN will increase from 10 to 11. Okay, so we will start with ASEAN. Why ASEAN? ASEAN India relationship. ASEAN India relationship. Formally, we started under the PV Narasimha Rao government. We started look east policy in 1991. So this was first look east policy of ASEAN India. Then in 2000, this how relationship evolved. First is look east policy. Look east means the 10 Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Myanmar, and other the 10 countries overall. No, I am not mentioning all the countries name, but the 10 countries. So we focus, we open our economy, and along with economy, we open our the foreign policy horizons. So this was the look east policy launched by PV Narasimha Rao government in 1991. Okay, this policy was focusing towards the engagement with ASEAN. Then comes to 2000 era, then 2020 era. Okay, the major development happened in 2014. What was that? We transformed this look into act. Till 1991 to 2014, we were just looking at bilateral formal engagement. But in 2014, we launched Act East policy. Okay, Act East policy. And there were many pillars of this policy. I will discuss each and every pillar, but I'm just uh, means explaining you the evaluation of the bilateral relations. Okay, so see, in 2018 Republic Day parade, all 10 members of head were invited. Invitation given, invited. Then what happened? 2018, we set up the formal strategic engagement. In 2022, once again, strategic engagement. And in 2025, India ASEAN ties are most important ties of 21st century because of the multiple factors. I will discuss each and every factor, but this is the sequence. 1991, look east. Look east, then act east. In this, there was 2010 FTA, India ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, and this agreement, India has lot of trade deficit because of the China using the ASEAN ways to transform its own production to the its goods to India through ASEAN countries. And under this, we are studying our ASEAN India relationship, and Singapore is a part of ASEAN. So we are not going to individually see the Singapore, but we will study Singapore, how Singapore can help to build India ASEAN relationship in the coming year. Okay, so this is are the evaluation of ties. Our next heading will be what are the domains, means domains of bilateral relationship. The first one, economic, obviously. Second one, defense and security. Culture, connectivity. In connectivity, there are two, digital connectivity and physical connectivity. People to people ties, people to people, then the science and technology, Then regional level, in regional you can mention ADM, ADM plus plus dialogue, then East Asia Summit. Then come to the global level, India's ASEAN support to India's UNSC membership, and India's support to ASEAN's ASEAN Way. ASEAN Way is a foreign policy tool of ASEAN, which means the maintaining their cultural ties, maintaining their integrity and sovereignty of ASEAN countries. So these are the global level, regional level, then sectoral, economic, in economy, trade, FTA, then the investment will come, science and technology. India have helped Cyclone Prediction Center, IMD. Then you can mention one more thing is there, that is Singapore satellite launched by in our ISRO. Okay, so this is ties. Then defense security, there are multiple examples of the then maritime security, the Malacca Strait, the most important state, Malacca Strait. Then you can mention the bilateral military exercises, Simbex, Miller. All these are the bilateral engagement, defense and security. Then the patrolling, patrolling of the this Bay of Bengal. Then the PTA, people to people ties, around 8.6%, 8.6% of, in just Singapore, this much diaspora we have, 8.6% in Singapore only, Indian diaspora. And Tamil is a second language in kind of official, it is official language in the Singapore. Okay, so this is a particular country. But in culture, who can forget the Buddhism and Thai Ramayana? You should mention this in your answers, because this will give you additional 1 or 2 mark each. At least you have understanding Buddhism. And if you remember the recent conflict between the Thailand and Cambodia, that was because of one Hindu Shiva temple. If you remember the things, that was the conflict between the Cambodia and Thailand because of Hindu Shiva temple. And you can then you realize the how the our cultural ties are in depth. And Chola, imperial Chola, might be, if you know the Chola, and the temple was built by Chola only. Connectivity, digital, in digital domain, most of the ASEAN countries, they are accepting India's UPI revolution. Okay, India's UPI revolution. And in the India Singapore, particularly Singapore's pay now and India's UPI, they are combined together and they are connecting digital. Now physical connectivity, there is a trilateral India Myanmar Thailand highway. Okay, and one more connectivity is there, Mekong Ganga Cooperation. Okay, MCG, Mekong Ganga Cooperation. So these are the areas and domains where India and ASEAN are engaged together. And if you see in economic domain, around 1.44 billion US dollar is annual trade value as a block. I'm not talking of the particular country, but as a block, this is the ties trade volume annually. Even the investment, if you see, Singapore is the largest ASEAN, largest country in the ASEAN have trading relationship with India. Okay, even the FDA. Once again, Singapore comes. Singapore is one of the third largest FDA inflow for the India. Okay, so this much significance is there. I have explained the Singapore also and overall ASEAN. But this is the engagement. There are certain point of constraint in India ASEAN relationship. These are the areas of convergence where we are mixing with our interest converge with ASEAN ways and our act is policy, then the strategic autonomic policy, everything. India maintain the strategic autonomy same, ASEAN ways strategic autonomy same. Okay, so now we will moving forward to what. Okay, now relations are there, but if we are engaging bilaterally, then there might be a chances that the constraint will arise. The constraint, there are several factors where India and ASEAN have divergence. The first one, if you see the economic ties only, trade deficit. In this, around 70% trade is in favor of ASEAN, and this is so because of secondary channelization of China's production to India via ASEAN. Okay, even the FTA is also fully not open for India. That's why in 2025 there is a review of this FTA. Okay. Now in economic also, service services and goods. In trade also there are two things, but services still is in India's favor, but still constraint is there because ASEAN countries are not opening service sector for India. Okay, this is economic constraint. Now comes to the regional and other constraints. Regional, if you go to the regional level, the factor is China. India's trade volume is 144 billion, but China is overall ASEAN countries around 890 US dollar. Can you imagine how much China is in depth with ASEAN countries in trade domain? So regional, at a regional level, ASEAN countries are trying to balance between the India and China. Okay, and third thing, the vision of India's Indo-Pacific at a regional level. Okay, first is China factor, IPKF, USA domain, and the border issue. Who can forget about Myanmar? Myanmar junta. These are the regional issues where India and ASEAN have divergence. IPKF, here India have joined the one pillar only, but at the broader level, India have India didn't join the one pillar of Indo-Pacific economic framework, but India has joined the remaining pillars. But still, in this domain also, ASEAN is not opening their economy to India. Okay, in US, influence of US is too much. Philippines, then other countries like you can say the Thailand, and compared to the USA and China, India is far lagging behind because they have economic power, they have military power, so they are investing heavily. Okay, so this is also USA factor. Then the Myanmar junta at a regional level, if you go since 2021, there is a military coup in the Myanmar, and that is hurting India's northeastern security. If you see, the instability in Myanmar is in somehow is related with the junta in Myanmar. Junta in Myanmar, instability in the Manipur is related with the junta in Myanmar. Okay, so we have to remember this. The instability in border areas is concern for India. Okay, so this is also one issue, point of constraint. And the next point, if you go global level, India's rising image is also contrast with ASEAN's view of global order. And one more thing, the shifting of balance of power in Indo-Pacific region. Okay, so these are the constraints at a global level. You can see this is also reason, but the globally Indo-Pacific and the renaming of the Asia Pacific to the Indo-Pacific, that was the one of the issue. And at a one more domain, RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. India didn't join this partnership at a, because this was a very good agreement, but India want to protect its, so India wanted to protect its national interest. India didn't join this RCEP. That was a bone of contention. So overall, these are the constraint. But even though these are the constraint, India is not lagging behind too far from the other countries, and India is still engaging at a bilaterally case on case basis with ASEAN countries. If you see, we have ADMM plus dialogue, ASEAN Defense Ministers Dialogue, which provide a forum cooperate in defense and security. If you remember, ASEAN countries, they vocally stood with India post Pahalgam attack. Okay, so this is one of the platform where India and ASEAN can engage further. Okay, so next the defense, then East Asia Summit. Okay, so this East Asia Summit provides for the connectivity and economic domain partnership. This provide economic domain partnership connectivity basically. But if you remember, the last or first week of the August, if you see, Philippines foreign minister, Philippines president visited India, and not only Philippines, ASEAN is emerged as one of the important defense import from India. India have sold the BrahMos to the Philippines. Okay, so defense partnership in that also. This is a global formal, but this is a defense engagement, equipment level partnership. India is exporting its defense technology, space technology, and supporting the ASEAN countries. Okay, so defense technology, BrahMos to the Philippines. This will be your example. Okay, apart from all this, India have good opportunity in health domain because India is called as a global world pharmacy. The second one, education, culture. Culture, most important is Buddhism. These three pillars, functional areas, India can further enhance partnership with ASEAN. If India engage fully with ASEAN, and ASEAN already showing interest with India and in a positive way in the uncertain present global order, and US's retreat from the multilateral institutions and the global level. So this provides a good way for India and ASEAN to converge their interest and further strengthen their partnership. Okay, so this is our India ASEAN relationship. I will once again explain you in the brief what exactly we have studied. Okay, India ASEAN, evolution of bilateral ties, then areas of cooperation, and major constraint, then wage further bilateral bilateral ties, and finally mention the conclusion as India want India's way, as per the S. Jayashankar's our for external affairs minister's book. India's way and ASEAN's way have more convergence than divergence, and that can help to build a Asian centric political or economic order. Okay, so this will be your conclusion, but conclusion should be a positive and the futuristic. Always remember this. Start with the recent current event in the introduction and end with a futuristic conclusion. Okay, our next is dragon, dragon elephant. Why we are studying this? Because the Hindu in last 2 3 days the Hindus are providing the articles and everything. Even in the PIB also they have mentioned the restart of India China relationship. And recently our Prime Minister visited China after very long gap. It's around 7 years post this Galwan clash and the 2013 clash. There were many clashes. I would say the clash started in 1980. Still Galwan 2020. There was continuous clashes between the skirmishes will happen on the border, but political willingness. India has shown the so-called, always India used to say the mutual respect, and with wholeheartedness, India's Prime Minister visited China to attend the SCO meeting. It was not only a SCO meeting, but our Prime Minister personally, bilaterally engaged with the Chinese President Xi Jinping. He met other leaders of the Chinese Communist Party. That shows India as India's wholeheartedness. India has a big heart to accept the reality despite having, and our S. Jaishankar always say that if we should engage, China should respect our territorial integrity, territorial sovereignties, and respect. Most important is trust. The what is lacking in India and China relationship, that is trust. We cannot trust China because we have seen Galwan, we have seen 2013, we have seen 1962, and even during the this Pahalgam attack, China was fully supporting Pakistan indirectly. Even our military establishment recognized this, and even they mentioned that we were not fighting with only Pakistan, who is a, we would say, the failed state, but we were fighting with China. So to study India-China relationship is very crucial for India to rise as a global power, because first time in the 21st century and first time since India's birth, some of the power or global power means superpower is just next to India. And as Kautalya said and acknowledged by our Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, we can change our friends, but we cannot change our neighbors. Okay, so this is India-China relationship. Let's start with India-China relationship. In short, I will give you idea how India-China relationship started. And if you remember, on the 1st of April 1950, India was the first ASEAN democratic country which recognized Communist People's Republic of China at a global level. Recognition India provided on the 1st of April, and see what China, how China is engaging with India in the, we have seen in the Galwan clash, we have seen the 2013 Doklam issue. So this was the thing, but India was the first democratic country which recognize China as a state. Okay, PRC. If you remember this, means if you know this PRC, India, Democratic Republic of China and People's Republic of China, Taiwan earlier was, now also Democratic Taiwan called as a Democratic Republic of China. Okay, so we started on 1st April 1950 a relationship with China, formally recognizing China as a state country. Okay, in 1950s, I would go by decade. in 1950s, 1954 Panchshil Agreement, mutual respect. China never respect our sensitivity, our sovereignty, but still we are the country with aim and with the goal of Vasudev Kutumbakam. We always show some empathy towards the countries, even that is superpower or the small global south country. We always stood with the principles. So in 1950 Panchshil Agreement we signed with China, and what China did in 1962 everyone knows. Post this there was two wars. In 1960s, 1962 war, then 1965, 1971. This time also China was fully supporting Pakistan. That time the friendship of this Pakistan and China was growing in 1962, only around 1962, 1963. Pakistan gave Karakoram and Saksham Valley to China. That IPAC, the India, China, Pakistan, China economic corridor passes through the Saksham Valley of Karakoram ranges. Okay, in 1960, post 1962. So 1965 war, then 1971 war, Pakistan. That time India was engaged with USSR. Okay, the major reason to sign the agreement with USSR was this one only. Because if you see the map, two front war. Okay, two front war. So what India did? India signed the agreement with USSR. See, bilateral relationship, in particularly the IR, study in whole comprehensive one study approach way. Any development happen that has some link with other development happen somewhere in the country or somewhere in other country or some part of the world. Okay, so 1971 India signed the agreement. In 1975 once again the clashes happened between the India and China, but we stood with our principles, and in 1988 Rajiv Gandhi visit to China. This visit was recognized as ASEAN century, and it was recognized as the two superpowers are meeting like USSR and USA. This visit was covered by fully international media because Rajiv Gandhi once again wholeheartedly visited China as our honorable Prime Minister did in last week. Okay, so this was the India-China relationship evolution. Then comes to the 21st century decade. Then once again we showed some wholeheartedness and we joined BRICS, RIC and SCO. SCO is 2017. And at a regional level, we started engaging with China in this forum because in this the balancer is Russia. And recent photo, if you see the recent photo, there also China is present between India and China. Sorry, Russia is present between India and China. And Russia is very crucial and the perennial friend of India, the steady friend of India since post world Second World War. Okay, so this 2000, but you remember 2020, 15th June, the day. Okay, the day, on this day, what are the pillars of trust and all the pillars of India-China relationship that collapsed in the one attack of China? Because this was the day where China violated our sovereignty and our right, despite we didn't being a first aggressor. China soldiers attacked our soldiers, and our soldiers, there was a clash. If everyone knows that what was happened, but this was the date where the bilateral ties collapsed completely, and that collapse once again was still from this day 2020 to 2025, even though there was meeting in 2024, but still this meeting was formal. But in Kazan 2025, once again India showed the wholeheartedness, and our prime minister met in Kazan 2025 with Chinese president Xi Jinping in Russia. See, this is our policy. We follow the policy of Vasudev Kutumbakam, and that means we treat each and every country as a one family. The whole world is one family. Our foreign minister always reiterate his statement that we want relationship with China, on the basis of mutual interest, mutual trust, and mutual sensitivity. But that trust breached on this day. We had agreement in 1993, confidence building agreement, the confidence building major, the border security agreement, but China never respected the agreement. That's why the major issue, initially only I told, the major issue between India and China is trust deficit. We cannot trust China. 1954 we signed the Panchashila agreement, and 1962 China attacked India. Similarly, in Doklam 2013, Doklam issue happened. In 2017, there was informal summit between Indian Prime Minister, Mamallapuram summit happened in 2017, and 2020 Galwan clashes happened. This is the reality of China. So this is evolution of India-China relationship, and still we know that we are vulnerable to China, but due to some issue, our engagement, and due to our wholeheartedness, we are engaged with China in various domain. I will mention the domain: economy, trade, 150 billion annual trade in 2023-24. And see, India is importing this much trade. Then trade is major pillar. In this also service and export you can mention. At a regional level, BRICS, as everyone knows, BRICS, SCO, these are the. Then one more pillar will come: connectivity, security engagement, border security. Okay, so these are the areas where we are engaging. There are many areas, even the science and technology, but in the post Galwan clash, India is taking calculated measures in the sense that precisely engaging with China, not in the so-called wholeheartedness, but India has adopted the pragmatism rather than the idealism post 2020. Okay, in economy, we are trading with China. Our trade value is around 115 billion US dollar. But if you see the economic survey data, there we have 99 billion US dollar deficit. Can you imagine this much deficit here? Why? Because China is not opening their economy. China is not allowing our service sector. We have the edge in the service sector, but still China is not letting us to enter into the service sector. Our service sector is more dominant than the China. Despite this, India is engaged in trade, and this much trade deficit is there. Okay, at a regional level, India always show wholeheartedness and breaks SCO all the summit. In despite the Pahalgam attack, China supported Pakistan. Our defense minister visited China, attended the foreign defense ministers SCO meet in July 2025. This is the wholeheartedness of India. Okay, then comes to the connectivity. Connectivity, Manasarovar Yatra, we halted the Manasarovar Yatra. The direct flight connectivity was not there, but still we respect the China sovereignty. Unlike China is doing with us, but still connectivity is there. That was connectivity broken down, halted post Galwan, and security border level. There is skirmishes happen the border, but at the border level, confidence building mechanisms are the measures are there. So security establishment, instead of the escalating the issue, they will manage at a border level, the military, so military establishment level. Okay, so these are the engagement India is engaging with this. Apart from this engagement, there are many issues. There are many issues India and China relations rather than a partnership, because China always breach our trust. China always breach India's trust. Okay, so there are many issues. First is trade deficit, and this trade deficit, I would say one example. One example is umbrella, API, active pharmaceutical ingredient. Can you imagine small things? Umbrella. Our manufacturing sector is able to produce this umbrella manufacture, but still we are importing umbrella. This is very cause of concern. This is very crucial point for India to be a self-reliant in at least the areas where India is strong. The active pharmaceutical ingredient. India is called as world's pharmacy, but can you know the who exactly supporting India's core active pharmaceutical is an ingredient where the drugs is manufactured, the core value, like if you consider as a core principle, basic features of the constitution. Similarly, in a drugs, the active pharmaceutical ingredient is the basic feature of the drugs. Okay, and we are 66% importing from China. Even solar panels, solar panels around I 30, 60, some two third solar panels we are importing, around more than two third we are importing from the China. Can you imagine how much we are dependent on the China in supply chain? This is just one dimension. Security level, china's china's build up construction around the full whole this line. China is building, and the recent confrontation is the world's largest dam on the Brahmaputra river. China is going to construct. Can you imagine how this will create the chaos? And that is a wake up call for the India. That's why our scholars like Nirupama Rao, she always say that India should realize the edifice of India-China relationship has collapsed in 2020, and India should realize that India should be a self-reliant, at least to engaging with the China. Okay, so this is the security level concern. Then comes to the people-to-people ties. Dalai Lama is also issue. People-to-people ties. We are letting their people to come in India, enjoy their freedom, everything, and even Chinese companies are in India. We are not limiting. But if this is not happen, our companies, what is happening? Our private sector there. China is restricting too much people to people ties. Even the reason, trade, fourth reason is this: our India's bilateral relationship with USA. Okay, even India is engaging with USA, and still India maintain the strategic autonomy. China is thinking that India is going towards USA. This is the China's trust on India, and this is happening openly before this Kazan summit and the recent the SCO summit. There was too much criticism. Even the China's, if you remember during Pahalgam and Operation Sindoor, India-Pakistan standoff, around all 1.5 lakh fake messages, and this is given by insert. uh, One scholar have mentioned the 1.5 lakh messages promoted against the fake, as a fake misinformation against the India's Operation Sindoor. This was the done, and Pakistan is the angle where China always treat as a perennial friend. And because of this, if you remember, I would say China was the country which made Pakistan as a nuclear state, and that promote India to be a self-reliant. In during the 90s, It was China who supported Pakistan to build their nuclear weapons. Okay, that was relationship of China and Pakistan have. Even China-Pakistan economic corridor, even the China-Pakistan trade relationship. Pakistan is fully dependent on the China, and China is using Pakistan as a puppet against India. China knows, China play Pakistan card very well at a very crucial time. We have also some cards, but India as a principled country, most of the time we follow the pragmatism. We have Dalai Lama, we can play the Taiwan, we can play the Xinjiang provinces issue, but we are not raising this issue. We want the relation should be on the mutual benefit, mutual sensitivity, mutual trust. This is the our relationship. This is our principle. But China is, but Pakistan is a major issue, major bone of contention between India and China. And one more at a global level, NSG, nuclear supply group. The only country which oppose India's induction in the nuclear supply group is China. Even we are not talking on this issue with China, but China was the only country who opposed India's entry in this group. This is a so-called elite group which provide the nuclear weapon and nuclear technology transfer within the countries. And India is not member of this because of China. So this is the this much issues are there with China. What we can do as a India, what we can do, we have multiple options. We are working on that option. We have been working and we had worked on that and we have achieved something. That's why the recent thaw between the India and China is because India's rising power, India's rising image as an economic power, and the success of Operation Sindhu. Okay, but still India have options to deal China by three major means: self-reliance, okay, आत्मनिर्भरता, strategic engagement, and discussion and dialogue with China itself. Okay, so these are the three channels where India can engage with China, particularly self-reliant. What we have to do, we have to make our manufacturing sector very strong. How we can do? And already we have started the strong manufacturing sector through the PLI scheme. Okay, Make in India. PLI scheme, 14 sector we are providing them financial, monetary support, tax exemption, and the recent is internal GST 2.0. Okay, so this is also going to build India as a strong, self-reliant in the trade sector and the manufacturing sector. Even this is just one dimension of trade. Even the security domain also, India is expanding its security horizon. Okay, at a strategic level, India, everyone knows Quad, then India US defense partnership, India USA partnership, then supply chain initiative. Okay, I will mention here what are the strategic options for India. In this also, you have Quad, then supply chain initiative, USC partnership. Here you can mention the Russia also, and good relationship with Japan. India is balancing its relationship with China by three ways at a strategic level. Quad, four member countries supporting each other's cause, supporting each other technical during the global crisis, global pandemic. This Quad supported to develop vaccine. Then recently they have the climate resilient center. Then the supply chain initiative between Australia and Japan. along with India. What this will do? This will this will reduce our dependence on China in the particularly goods domain. Okay. Now come to bilateral engagement. This is the USA. Already we have strong ties because of this. So the Donald Trump wave is a short term wave, but our relationship with USA since 2000, it's growing and expanding too much. We have the nuclear agreement, we have ISA international security agreement, ISA internal security agreement, then Limoas, Comcasa, all this agreement India have signed with USA, and this Donald Trump tariff is just a short-term measure, but in long term, India and USA have strong relationship in space domain. Also, you can see the NISAR recent example. Okay, the next one, Russia. Russia is very good and Russia rejuvenated Russia. I would say Russia's rejuvenation and new zeal to be once again the superpower can be seen in the Russia's recent engagement, Russia's Ukraine conflict, and Russia's own assertiveness. Okay, and the Japan, a developmental overseas developmental Japan is providing around 50 billion so-called nominal rate loan to India. So Japan can be act as a so-called alternative to China. And India have very good relationship with all these three countries. So this will be the good channel for India to make itself strong compared to China. Now come to bilateral level. I would say a bilateral level discussion, dialogue, mutual respect, mutual interest, mutual sensitivity, just a minute, mutual respect and trust. Okay, discussion and conflict containment rather than escalation. So bilaterally, India can do this with China, and China should understand the India discussion dialogue. First and prerequisite is the discussion and dialogue, and that should be based on this concept: mutual respect, mutual interest, mutual sensitivity, and mutual trust. This once again we build a mutual respect, mutual trust, and mutual sensitivity. The conflict will never transform into the escalation. Will never conflict will never escalate into the dispute. So this is at a global, this is at a bilateral level, India and China can do togetherly, because as our earlier I have mentioned, as our former prime minister said, we can change our friend, we can change our friend enemies, but we cannot change our neighbors. We have to deal with, and China should understand. China has a border with India, and India is also rising power. India is rising is power, so China also has to engage, and because of this only China realized this, and China invited wholeheartedly the China which opposed in last July 2025 the mentioning of the Pahalgam attack in SEO defense minister meeting. In recent meeting with our prime minister present there, every SEO member acknowledged that terrorism should be ended, and Pahalgam attack has mentioned in the this recent SEO declaration. Okay, so this is a bilateral level. This is overall China, but from the my side, I would say the relation should be based on this thing. What China and India need is trust. Trust is there, and it should not be the depend on the issue by issue. trust in economic domain, trust in long-term vision, trust in the so-called Asian century. If we believe in the Asian century, then and the climate, India and China can contribute in the environment domain. India and China can contribute in the regional domain. But the sinocentrism should be managed by India, and China should shed its engagement and shed its inertia to engage wholeheartedly with India. Okay, and all this engagement and everything should be based on this word trust. Trust should be there. Trust should be there since birth of both countries, both nations. The what was lacking is trust, and breached by China's adventurism, China's aggression, China's unilateral action. India have never been an aggressor party. India always choose a dialogue over conflict, dialogue over dispute. Okay, so this is India China relationship. Last but not last would be the our India EU relationship, because today only, if you see, today only we have seen two EU commissioners are visiting India this week to finalize the bilateral ties. Okay, India EU. Why we want to discuss India EU relationship? Can anyone tell me? Why we want to discuss India EU relationship? Because India EU have some significance. So when we start in India EU relations, first of all, India is a EU, European Union is a bloc. It's called as supranational entity. Okay, supranational entity which consists of the economic domain, security domain, and the so-called small countries coming together forming their one unique foreign policy, defense policy. Okay, it is a 28 countries bloc, and which consists of the many countries, and that is why the reason everyone want. And EU is a EU also NATO member. Okay, all the EU countries are NATO members, and Ukraine want to join this EU because of the security reason. Okay, so India EU relationship, EU's formally formed in 1991 Lisbon Treaty. That was the foundation for the EU's formal parliament, economic domain, and everything. Okay, so EU, we signed the 1994 agreement, mutual interest agreement was there, formalization of relationship. Then in 2002 there was EU India summit. In 2004 strategic partnership we have launched. And see the timeline. 2007 we started with bilateral trade investment treaty, so called bilateral trade FTA, free trade agreement, and we are in 2025. Still we are discussing, 13 rounds has done, but still this deal is still pending. But this is India EU relationship, you all. This is way India EU relationship, you all. So why we want to focus on the EU? There is certain significance for India and certain significance for EU of India. Okay, so first what we are going to do, significance of EU for India. Obviously EU is a block of 28 countries. Now come to point, India have 130 billion trade with EU, and EU is third largest in overall, third largest trading partner, and largest trading partner in goods. Third in overall trade and services, but in goods is a largest trading partner. So we want EU. Then comes to the investment. Since 2000 till 2024, around 117 billion US dollar FDI is flow from EU to India. This much investment is done by EU countries in India. This is one economic dimension. Okay, now come to the democratic values, political dimension. EU democratic values, democratic principle, India being largest democracy. Okay, so obviously EU is important for India and this democratic principles. Third one is diaspora. Diaspora. Fourth one, exact number I am not remembering, but around 20 to 30% diaspora is there in EU countries alone. And these diaspora are the largest source of remittances. India is the largest recipient of the remittances according to World Bank report. You should remember this. Okay. Environmental diplomacy. In 2008, green energy partnership India and EU have started. And being China, according to Kyoto Protocol, EU countries comes under the Annex 1. That means developed country. We should provide fund to the developing countries like India. So in 2008, India and EU started their engagement in the environmental diplomacy. Okay. So these are some areas where EU is significant for India. Apart from this, you can mention the health sector. Apart from this, space technology. Apart from this, the global gateway initiative of EU and which counter the China's Belt and Road initiative is also a good example where India and EU interests converse. This is EU's ambitious infrastructure project which counters the China's Belt and Road initiative. So all these domains, and if you remember in 2022, French Guiana helped to launch India's largest missile. India's largest satellite. Okay, so these are the areas. Because of this, we need EU, and FTA is also one of the things. But now come to we have now we studied the overall their engagement. Why is EU is significant for India? Now tell me, if this much significant is there, then why the relationship are still staggering? The why this took 15 years, 13 rounds for the FTA? Because there are certain reasons. The certain reasons which constant the bone of contention between India and EU's are first and foremost is recent Russia Ukraine ties. Russia Ukraine conflict and India's steadfast support to Russia. Okay, and India has specifically mentioned that it's our national interest. What we are doing, that is in our national interest. Still, our import of oil is less than what European Union is doing as a whole country. Okay, so this is a bone of contention between India and EU. Second one is vision of Indo-Pacific. Even this area, India and EU can converse, but EU is supporter of USA, okay, and West, so-called the global West, and USA. What USA, EU is a puppet. I would not puppet as such, but the EU most of the time get influenced by USA's decisions. If you see the most of the visit between EU, USA, EU, USA, there is going on vision, and recently also EU was the first country who saw first bloc which signed the deal with Donald Trump. Okay, so this is also vision. India's vision is multilateral rule-based order, and EU follows USA order, influenced by US. Okay, these are the two bone of contention. The third one is sanitary and phytosanitary barriers imposed by EU technical which hampers India's export to EU. And one more thing in cyber, GDPR might be general data protection. GDPR of the EU is one of the thing where our digital, we are the IT, we have the one of the largest IT sector, and we are providing online services. But because of this General Data Protection Act, the so-called our IT companies are not able to do their good engagement and business in EU countries. This is one more thing I will mention here. GDPR issue, data concern. Okay, and additionally, one more thing is there, that is carbon border mechanism. CBM, there is CBT, transport mechanism. This mechanism will hamper India's aluminum and iron sector, and this is also bone of contention. Why this carbon border mechanism? Because according to EU's new law, those country which export certain goods which having the potential of high carbon emission, they will be charged additionally because their potential is more in emission. They are contributing in global warming. And if you see, India, around 10 to 12 billion dollar is aluminum and iron export to EU. So automatically this trade will get hampered. So this carbon border mechanism tax, okay, carbon border CBM, you can say CBIBM something, but CBM, carbon border mechanism. So this is also one bone of contention. Now this much bone of contention there, but still India and EU have willingness, and they have shown the willingness to further their relationship. That's why in Jan also, in Jan or May, EU full delegation along with EU chief came to India, visited India, and they are this recent commissioners visit to India are about to finalize the so-called very long pending bilateral trade free trade agreement. Okay, so this shows willingness of EU and India to strengthen the further ties. So what are the areas where EU and India can further strengthen their ties? So these can be, I would say, areas of cooperation. The first one is obviously FTA. In EU context, we call it as BTA. Okay. Then recently we have signed the FTA with EU. The same template we can implement in the we have signed the FTA with UK. Same template we can implement in this India EU relationship. Okay. Then the space sector, and most importantly, okay, retreat of USA, because this is the major player which till now and even today also they are shaping the global politics. But because of Donald Trump, US is retreating from the international floor and fauna. Okay, so what India and EU do, they can rejuvenate the WTO rejuvenation. They can do this WTO rejuvenation. And how we can do this? Recently, since 2019, the dispute settlement body of WTO is at all not functioning, and EU has launched their multi-party alternate dispute resolution system. India can join that dispute resolution system. This is FTF is the first pillar to kickstart their further enhanced bilateral ties enhancement. Then the space technology, because ISRO and European Space Agency have good convergence. And if you remember, ITER, International Technical Electronic Cooperation, Okay, reactor. Okay, this is the IT year. In 2025, our prime minister visited this site, and India is contributing in this program as tokamak. One more area of cooperation is AI regulation. AI regulation 2025 Paris summit. And if you go individually, France is a very good friend of India. Similar the case with Germany. If you see yesterday, there is talks going on between Russia and USA to anyhow stop the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Our Prime Minister spoke with France President Emmanuel Macron, and France is very good. Means France have very good relationship with India, and France is providing the many in technology in the defense sector, very good ties. Even the case with Germany, similar with the Ukraine, India have visited the Cyprus, a small country of EU, but still India gave respect to Cyprus also. Indian Prime Minister visited Cyprus. India is more engaging with even the Spain. We have the bilateral agreement with the Spain to develop their own space, to develop so aircraft facilities. Okay, so India is treating EU and EU members as individually and want to converse their interests and enhance their interests. So these are areas where India and EU can enhance their bilateral ties. At a global level, even the Indo-Pacific also they can contribute. Even the Central Asian republics. The most important is area of Africa. If you see Africa, where the power play game is there, and in this, what we can do, India is already partnership with Japan. Similarly, similarly, India can partnership with EU. Okay, and for EU, if they want to enhance their relationship, India is a good market. India is the third largest economy by PP, but then India have the demand. Then the India's labor force. India is a growing country, so for EU also have advantage. That's why EU want to sign the bilateral treaty, very FTA, bilateral FTA as soon as possible. Okay, so these are the areas where India and EU can transform their bilateral relationship to at a higher level. Environment diplomacy is also there. The most important, the terrorism. I forgot to mention the terrorism, but India and EU have similar concern for the terrorism. The rise of wolf warrior attack in EU and the terrorist attack in India. Now they both are on the convergence for the counter-terrorism measures and counter-terrorism measures and cooperation to halt or to combat against the terrorism, so-called so-called radicalization of the youth. Particularly if you see what is happening in the France, the most of the people radicalization of the youth through online media and everything. So there is a better chances of India and EU can cooperate by eliminating or at least by reducing the areas or bone of contention areas. Okay, so overall this is India EU relationship. Okay, finally, before the concluding the session, what we have studied today? We have studied three main part of IR: EU, ASEAN, and China. And this comes under GS2. Okay, and if you see, there are always question, at least alternate year or 1 year, there is question on this domain, particularly EU, ASEAN, China. Okay, so we have covered this holistically. If you want to study any country's relationship, try to break it down in economic domain, try to break it down in the security domain, try to break it down at a regional level, then functional area, health, education, people to people ties, cultural ties, current context, the regional you can mention any global level. Why I'm suggesting this approach? Any India and any country. But I would say for the GS, there is no need to study each and every country and no need to study each and every organization of United Nations. What you have to do, you have to go to the main syllabus and just see what exactly mentioned. India's bilateral, regional and global engagement with countries and agreements. So ASEAN is a one block. Similarly, the EU is a block. Why we study individually China? We have to study all the countries of India's neighbor at a bilateral level because these are the first channels of India's foreign policy. Okay, so in this way we can conclude our today's lecture. Thank you for your patience and watching this lecture fully and listening my 1.5 hour discussion. If any issue is there, you can raise issue and you will get the notes of this three topics in this lectures link given below. Okay, or you can visit the Plutus IAS site. And one more thing I just want to tell you, we are launching specifically mentorship programming. In this mentorship programming, what we are going to do, actually it has already started. In this is today is the fourth day. Morning 4 a.m. to 9 p.m. we are following one study approach. In this one study approach, what we are going to prelims, mains and interview. This is vertical. Horizontally, what we are covering, current affair also, static also and facts also according to this. And this is for all the subject. We are giving you procedure, you have to follow that procedure. I am the only mentoring the student along with the Huma ma'am and the Nishan sir. If you want to join or at least experience this kind of mentorship initiative, you can call to the administration and you get enrolled, take experience 8 to 10 days, then you can decide for the admission. Okay, so this is the last thing. The batch name for the mentorship is Sankalp Sarthi. This is awesome initiative. This will help you guys to clear not only prelims but whole complete exam. Okay, thank you.